Welcome to the WIN-NextGen Podcast, where we discuss cultivating today's talent for tomorrow's workforce pipelines. I'm Elisa Basnight, and I am so glad you're joining us. We believe the world really cannot afford to leave any segment of today's young people unprepared for what is coming next. And so that brings us to today's topic. Artificial intelligence, it's not a distant concept, it's a disruptor, it's a transformer. It's already shaping and reshaping internships, entry-level jobs, and early work experiences that teens have traditionally relied on to build confidence and skills. I am so excited because we have an important conversation about what that means for young people right now. I'm especially intrigued because this conversation is being led by a youth voice. Joining us today, we have Karissa Tang. She's a high school senior, a researcher, and get this, a recent CNN contributor who has been studying AI's impact on teenage employment. Karissa, welcome to the WIN-NextGen Podcast. Before we get started and dive into your research, I was hoping you could share a bit about what inspired you to study AI's impact on teenage employment and how that journey led you to write your paper and work with organizations like UCLA.
Yeah, thank you, Elisa. It's great to be on the show. I'm so excited for our conversation today. I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. I've had a few ventures, like in the beginning of high school, middle school, building a board game or building mobile apps. And I've always wanted to do research and get more into that sort of economics, businessy realm of research. So I decided to cold email a professor who I read one of his works on mergers and acquisitions, and he was from UCLA, and I was very honored that he responded to my email and sort of a 3-month summer internship where I conducted research under him and studied different companies and their growth rates and all that led to this 2-year research relationship and also mentorship that we have now. So that's sort of how I got into the use doing research with UCLA. In terms
Okay.
of how I started doing research about AI's impact on teen employment as a whole, really it was because I live here in the Bay Area, so drinking boba tea is pretty common among us teens, and many teens they get a summer job where they, make boba for other people, or maybe they work as a cashier. And for me, a lot of my aunts have boba shops. So that sort of made me a magnet for a lot of teens or my peers and classmates and friends to ask me to refer them for a summer job. But I was surprised to learn that my aunt wasn't really in need of a summer job. And that was because she had, a kiosk system who was allowed customers to make orders. So that would take, 1, 2, 3 employees per shop, and that would be the same for boba chains, the same for cafe chains, the same for fast food chains, and then that's the same for many other jobs as well. So that launched me into writing this research paper and having that internship and research experience with UCLA. And the professor I worked with there helped me have like the idea and the analytical skills to write the research paper.
That is incredible. I just absolutely love how you saw something affecting your generation. You chose to investigate it rather than just react to the situation. So, kudos to you. And I know you're probably inspiring a number of our listeners here. So, you've also been cited in a recent CNN article about how AI is changing entry-level jobs for teens. Do you think you could share in your words why this topic matters so much for your generation right now?
I think this topic matters because it's so applicable. I'll just start with 3 areas that entry-level jobs, teens having entry-level jobs, how that helps us teens. So the first is finances and education. I think many teens they use summer jobs as a way to finance for their future college. And without these entry-level jobs, when AI displaces them, makes it harder for teens to save up money for their future college or for any finances or things they want to spend. Second is being as life skills. I know I was a basketball coach for a middle school basketball team, and that was sort of my introduction to being responsible or showing up on time or communicating skills or financial literacy. And there's so many life skills that teens learn, that teens need to learn, that entry-level jobs allow. And then the third is just independence. I think many teens use their teen roles as a way for them to sort of gain independence of their own life, to be able to spend their own money, be able to, go to their own work after school. And I think those three things make it very applicable and very important for teens to want to have teen jobs and for how it's important for teens to have teen jobs. And I think this matters so much for our generation because with AI displacing many of these teen roles, it's difficult for a lot of teens to get this experience in because, there's not as many entry-level jobs out there. And I think that will impact us when we become adults and also impact perhaps the future areas we want to study in the future, and all that along the line. So I think it matters for us teens because it's so applicable.
Gosh, those are some really powerful perspectives because it's coming really from someone who's living it, not just analyzing it from the outside. And those takeaways, finance, life skills, independence, those are really critical perspectives and the value that comes from these types of jobs that do carry through your entire workforce journey. So. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. And I'd love to now zoom out and look at what your research was able to uncover. I know in your research, I've heard you in some other forums and discussions. It's reflected also in the CNN coverage. Experts saying AI is posed to disrupt many entry-level roles, possibly eliminating some entirely. So, what are some of the key quantitative findings you uncovered about how AI is influencing teen jobs overall?
I think net my analysis shows that AI could displace 770,000 jobs by 2030, and that's 27% decline from 2024 employment figures. So that's huge because right now there's over 5.66 million teens employed, teens ages 16 to 19, employed in the US, and around 30% of teens are employed. And this decline, 770,000 jobs, nearly 27% displacement, is one key quantitative finding that my research shows. I think specifically the research that I did, the research paper, it only looks within the top 10 teen jobs, which is
Mhm,
covers around 50% of total teen employment. But the
mhm.
most popular job, right, being a cashier, there's going to be a predicted 54% decline by 2030, and that's huge. That's going to displace over 350,000 teen workers. So those are just some big quantitative findings, high level, that my research paper predicts.
Oh, I had one of those top 10 jobs that you've talked about in your research. And when you listen to that and just really process it, those numbers really make this real. And it's no longer speculation, right? This is measurable change. And what I find from my seat, yeah, I was a teen once, but also your research supports the qualitative comments I receive from next gens that I serve and work with, that the traditional entry level roles that served as the training grounds for junior employees are disappearing. And as a business leader, I find this very concerning because it's also potentially leaving a gap in our mid level experience in the future, which you alluded to in some of your earlier remarks. So, kudos again for really digging into this. And I think your work, Karissa, also examines specific work segments. You mentioned those just a couple of minutes ago, some of those, but what kind of jobs seem most vulnerable to AI displacement from your research, and which areas might be more resilient or even expanded by AI?
Yeah, so my research paper looks at the top 10 most popular teenage jobs. Within those top 10, the areas that are most vulnerable to AI displacement is number one, cashiers. That's the most popular teen job with over 700,000 teens employed. So with self-checkout systems like Walmart and Target are already using self-checkout technology, it will impact predicted 54% decline by 2030. The third most popular teen job with fast food and counter workers, with kiosks that are self-serving, there'll be a predicted 37% decline by 2030. Retail salespersons is the fifth most popular job, with Walmart's Gen AI assistants, Target's Bullseye Gift Finder. There's going to be a predicted 30% displacement by AI by 2030. Six is customer service reps with a predicted 39% decline for teens by 2030. So those are the top four most impacted jobs by AI, and all of those are within the top six most popular teen jobs. Areas that are a little more resilient to AI typically have fine motor skills or a lot more human connection interpersonal skills. For example, the ninth most popular teen job, hosts and hostesses, is a predicted 0% displacement by AI. And the waiters and waitresses is 7%. Cooks and food prep workers and freight and storage and material hand movers, that's like in the 10% or less. So those are a little more resilient, but there is still some impact with AI. But I think some areas that have been expanding is within newer job segments. So not within the ones that are really popular now, but with the ones that are rising. For example, getting to social media. A lot of teens have been getting to social media, making UGC content. There's some companies such as one I know is SideShift, where a lot of teens are making UGC content on social media, using AI to help other people. So that's one job that has been expanding. Um, there have been a few more that are a little less displaced. For example, healthcare, summer camps, coaching is less impacted by AI, but that's just some high level, what jobs are impacted by AI more or less.
Right. Oh gosh, I'm sitting here taking all these notes because for
Yeah.
our audience, folks, Chris and I haven't talked about all of these details. We're learning and engaging with each other here. So these distinctions are very important. And I just saw today, I know that there was a recent Harvard study talking about perhaps in the next like 5 years, we will possibly see a 30 to 50% reduction in our white collar entry level jobs. And so this this tsunami of change, right? This is disruption and transformation is you can like basically pull this needle through starting from your generation, right? From just the entry level and pulling them through to I should say your teen jobs through the entry level, which is going to really disrupt and transform the modern workforce and the future of work. So thank you for sharing these distinctions with the impacted jobs as well as those that you see for your generation with more resilience. And what I love about what you pointed out, Carissa, is that we shouldn't be looking at this fearfully, right? It's about preparation. When you know and you have that information beforehand, you can prepare. So what I'd like to pivot and talk about now is like, what can teens like yourself actually do about this? So given what you found, how do you think teens could be thinking more about their career planning today, especially if the traditional path of an entry-level job, summer jobs are changing before they even get a foot in the door, yourself included?
Yeah, I think like you said, the most important thing is to be prepared and to also to be flexible. So I think sort of two pieces of how teens can be thinking about career planning is one, to explore, to learn. I think finding internships and apprenticeships early is one way of getting that foot in the door, of getting your hands dirty when you're still young. So I think one way, internships and apprenticeships sounds like a bit of a big word, and scary word, but I think one way of just sort of getting into it is staying in contact with older folks or upperclassmen at schools to get different opportunities and learn from them or learn under them. I think there's a lot of people who are willing to share about what they've learned or let you learn under them for a bit. Um, because a lot of people do want to help, the next generation. I think as a youth and as a teen, putting yourself in a position where you can learn from other people and be curious is one way of being prepared and sort of knowing what you want to get into. And I think one thing that's great about internships is one, you could get hands-on experience about a certain field you're interested in, and you could learn certain AI tools and how that works within your work or whether you want to work in that field or not. And two, there is not really any downside to it in the sense that um either, you figure out that you love it and you want to explore more, or maybe that's not a direction you want to go in, but at least you learned something from it. I think that's very valuable. So yeah, learning and exploring by talking, by keeping in contact with people, by keeping an open mind, by trying to be open to absorb new ideas and concepts, is one way of staying ahead of the game. And I think is one way you could think about career planning. I think the second is thinking towards college. I'm a high school senior myself, so college has definitely been on my mind. And there's been an increase in majoring in STEM and also double majoring in humanities to be more AI resilient. Um, that's something I think many teens and myself included can explore to see if that's something we're interested in. Another one is looking into interdisciplinary majors or also perhaps deviating from the college path if it makes more sense. I know college counselors at my school encourage kids to go into trade if that's something they're interested in. And I think there's been a great increase in going to trade. For example, my aunt, who has two eighth grade twin sons, she's been encouraging them to go and perhaps looking into trade or going to um, becoming an electrician or doing more hands-on work. So I think, yeah, I think the biggest thing is to be flexible, be prepared, and do that by learning and exploring when you're young, and also by thinking ahead about college or perhaps not a traditional college path. And I think that's big for us teens is to really learn and explore while we're still young and have a curious mind.
I love that reframe and such valuable nuggets coming from yourself to your fellow teens out there and young adults and even the middle schoolers who WIN-NextGen we also work with to really start thinking about your thoughts and your recommendations proactively. So instead of asking like what is disappearing, we, as you've advised everyone us to think about is we start asking what skills are emerging, right? And how
Hmm.
do we prepare for those? So I noticed in the CNN article, Carissa, you talked about character, you talked about tenacity, you talked about curiosity, and one of my favorites is you also talked about empathy. So how do these human traits matter in a world where AI is automating routine tasks from your perspective and your research?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing is that these skills are adaptable. Sort of like what we said earlier and what you said, Elisa, is that a lot of this is being prepared for the future, and AI is going to displace many roles in the future. And as much as, it's important to want to try to predict and look into all of these things, and there's lots of value and analysis in that as well. That's what my research paper is about. A lot of it also is not fully predictable. So I think the biggest thing is that these skills, character, tenacity, curiosity, and empathy, they're adaptable. So even if AI takes one route or another route or impacts one segment a lot more than one expected or a lot less than one expected, focusing on these traits will get you ahead of the curve because these traits are adaptable, regardless of how AI takes its swing on things. So, um, for like tenacity and curiosity, let's say, you want to go into like writing, but AI was taking over many of the writing jobs. I think your tenacity and curiosity will allow you to be able to further your skills in another area or deepen your skills in writing so you won't get displaced by AI. So you're staying ahead of the curve. I think for character and empathy, I think that's something AI won't fully displace either. I think there is like talk about AI being involved in, therapy or counseling. And there's all that. But I do think there's still value in humans being in front of humans. And we saw this during the COVID pandemic, right? There is still so much value when we're face to face. Even though online is great and virtual is great, humans still need that face to face connection. So empathy and character, being genuine and conversation, I think that's a very human aspect of our lives, and it's not displaceable whether in the workforce or day-to-day conversation for most roles. And with AI displacing many of the not as like the more virtual roles, I guess, it's even more important, since it's something that AI won't fully displace. So, I think also going on that a lot of companies are looking for fit within the companies. So, those social skills, the character and empathy, that's something that's important, whether that be in interviews or just, just being an integral part of the team. So even as AI is automating many tasks, I think building these personal traits is something that AI won't displace. And it's important because it's adaptable. These are traits that will go keep you ahead of the curve, you know, whether you go one route or another route. And I think it's also something that won't just help in the workforce, but just our day-to-day lives. And I think that's important. It's adaptable.
Oh, spot on, Carissa. All of you, this conversation around the personal traits is such powerful reminders is that we cannot short shift the training on these. And I have to give a plug for the work that we do around this to really help parents and our listeners here understand that you can actually cultivate those traits. Right? You may not realize you're even doing some of them, right? And you think about critical problem solving and empathy and compassion and communication skills, adaptability, resilience. We call those core durable skills. They are skills that, as you rightfully mentioned, Karissa, are going to help you, whether in your life arena, whether they're in the workforce arena, whether they're in your social arena. And technology really can automate tasks, but it cannot automate character, as I like to say. And as we find ourselves in this iteration of the Industrial Revolution, it really is a powerful reminder that it's what I call collaboration between human and machine. And so these life traits that we're talking about are critically important for everyone to be thinking about that constant development. So thank you. And I have some further thoughts that if we have time, we'll come back to this on this because I think that's a very important topic as we think about the future of work. I like to bring it closer to home with you right now is and just I know you have siblings and you have parents, and so I'm curious whether you and your parents ever talk about these future of work issues at home. Can you share with us your perspective, what educators and parents who may have high school level teens in their homes, perhaps what they could do to adapt and thrive from some of your personal experiences?
I think at home and also at school, talking about AI and AI's impact on society, we do talk about it, but I think unfortunately not as much as we should be, or as not as much, we're not talking about it as much as its importance on our lives is. Like the ratio is a little off. But there is still conversation about it, which is great. I think if I were to offer advice to educators or parents with teens, is two things about AI. I think first is to become educated about it, especially in education. I think there's often stigma around using AI, and I think that stigma is valid in the sense that, there is question about like the ethics of using AI or how much that's displacing our critical thinking and all that. And I think that's an important conversation to have. But I think one thing is that there's also many benefits from using AI in education. Um, whether that be, it helps you learn a certain concept or it walks you through the steps of solving a problem. So I think it's important to think about both the positives and negatives. And one thing educators and parents can do is not by leaning totally on one side, but to educate themselves and form their opinion about how AI should be used in schools and understand like both the positives and the negatives of AI. So, yeah, I think the first thing is to educate yourself about AI's impact on students' current lives and also their futures. So, not just how AI impacts education, but also how it impacts the workforce. And then the second thing is to share this with others, with the students, is to educate others. Um, I think, the role of many parents and educators is to prepare the teens for a successful future. And I think when parents and educators are sharing about AI's impact on their future employment, I think that gives a lot of us teens, insight about the direction we should go in. So I think, yeah, educating others is really important for our parents and educators. And then also the other thing is to build valuable life skills that are adaptable. Sort of going back to the character, tenacity, curiosity, and empathy conversation we had earlier, is that when we start focusing on these values, which feels more applicable, rather than strictly, the content of let's learn this specific math concept or this specific history concept. Though that's important, I think focusing also on the soft skills allows teens to thrive. So I think, AI can know a lot of information, a lot of facts about the world, a lot of how to solve the certain math problem. But how are we rising beyond that? And I think it's by teaching, yes, those hard skills of this certain concept, but also by teaching those soft skills. And I think it's the job of educators and parents to really uplift this part. I mean, I think that's something that I think in education we don't really see enough of. One example of sort of how we did this is in my US history class. I think there's so much value in learning history and I think learning history is great. It allows you to see the cause and effects of the past and the future. But I think sadly a lot of students see it as, just rote memorization of facts. But one thing my teacher did a great job of is, yes, he taught those facts, but we also did it in an engaging way. We had mock trials, we had debates, we had different activities. History really came to life, and that taught us, how to speak to an audience, how to convey our points, how to live with an open mind when we discuss different ideas. And I think it's really important for parents and educators to keep that in mind that, yeah, education is about learning these certain facts, but I think it's also about learning these soft skills that are applicable everywhere. And I think when teens sort of get that insight about, what I'm learning is applicable, teens really light up and really engage with the contents. So, yeah, I think biggest thing is educate yourself, number one, and then educate other people.
Thank you for sharing that, and I loved how you brought your answer, your thoughts around this to life with that illustration. I will tell you, I was actually a judge not too long ago. It was about a month ago at a STEM fair and a competition, a STEM competition at a high school. And it was so fascinating seeing all of these incredible presentations by the youth. And what I also saw it as a great opportunity because you oftentimes in life, like you said, you're going to need to be presenting, you're going to have to think on your feet, you're going to have to speak extemporaneously at times, is that STEM competition was not just put your ideas together, but it was also really an opportunity to demonstrate and utilize those soft skills that we're talking about. So these conversations that you talk about with parents and teens, educating yourself, educating others, they're so important and very relative to the time we find ourselves in. So my takeaway listening and being a part of this conversation with you is really it's not just about the AI tools, right? It's about the mindset, it's about the exposure, it's about the adaptability that really come to play here. So I think as we look at, resources and tools out there, there are this is why we have programs like WIN-NextGen. And I'm curious whether WIN-NextGen, I know we've talked a bit about it, it works with teens through programs that support early career exploration, industry exposure, workforce readiness, and later this year we're really excited about bringing on board a leadership development program through our Next Gen Leadership Accelerator. So I'm curious from your research and perspective, how do you see initiatives like this and similar youth-focused programs raise awareness and help teens understand the changing world of work in ways that formal education, you mentioned it a moment ago, may not always hit the mark or they may not just have those opportunities to provide the tools and resources that we know will be needed and necessary to be successful in the future of work.
Yeah. So I think, as great as school is, unfortunately, we don't get to learn as much about real employment, like the real employment world and our career specs with AI. And I think programs like WIN-NextGen allow us as teens to learn more about, our careers and our futures. So I think, yeah, the first thing is that WIN-NextGen gives you hands-on access and statistics and analysis to how the labor market is evolving from a professional standpoint. So I think that allows career exploration that I know a lot of us teens are missing out on because I know many of us, myself included, don't fully know what we want to do or we have some idea, but we don't have one exact path that we're on. And I think getting different ideas and learning about different things while we're teens will allow us to build the skills so that whichever direction we choose, that we'll be successful in that path. And also it'll allow us to have more information as we explore different careers. I think the second thing is soft skills. Sort of like what we talked about earlier. There's a bit of a lack of learning soft skills in schools. And I think through WIN-NextGen's leadership training and their ed tech simulations and all that, I think that'll give you hands-on, learning to develop your soft skills. And I think nothing will fully replace, the full in-person connection and team building. But I think having these simulations is a good supplement um, to understand and learn these soft skills. And I think the third is just gaining, it's just the access for employment. Sort of like what my research paper talks about, AI will displace many teen roles. And I think, teens still need a way to learn and develop these skills, to learn independence, to gain financial literacy, without these typical team jobs we have. And I think WIN-NextGen's pipeline, where they connect you with employers, is one great way just to connect students with their future employment and to get those internships and apprenticeships that are so important for teens to stay ahead of the game. So yeah, I think what programs like WIN-NextGen are great, especially for teens looking and interested about what they're going to do in their future.
Well, I have to share. Thank you. That was really helpful for me to hear your thoughts about this, since this is me hearing your response to these questions, real time, and so that makes my heart smile because that's what we're here to do, right? We want to see you, your peers, your friends, the generations coming up behind you, and being able to participate and lead in the future of work successfully. So I know your parents must be so proud of you. And I just really enjoying our conversation here. And I'd love to close with something practical and encouraging, like I always do. And so I'm hoping you could just give us one key piece of advice to teens listening today about navigating their career exploration, their career planning in the age of AI. What would that one piece of advice be, Karissa?
Yeah, so as a teen, I'm still navigating all of it as well. But sort of from what I've learned and all the research and different internships and opportunities that I've been honored to get, my biggest thing is to explore your passions fully. So I think, when we explore what we're into, whether that be through a personal project, through an internship, through talking to different people, and when we really get into what we want to do, um, we're focusing on the skills that we're building for the future. And we're not even thinking about it because we're enjoying the process of it. So, whether that be a personal project you've always wanted to do, or whether that be having conversations with adults, and mentors or teachers about, your future. I think when we're passionately doing something, we're gaining our human skills, we're gaining empathy, our communication, our leadership. We're gaining those creative and problem solving skills of I have this problem in my life, what project or what can I make to fix it? And we're gaining that AI literacy, how can I use AI tools to help me on this project, to help me with this certain job I'm working on, and how can I ride beyond AI so that I'm going to be successful in a world where AI is prevalent. And I think pursuing your passions and what you're interested in fully is one way we could get ahead of that game.
I think that is such fantastic advice for all of our audience members and participants. Such thoughtful advice, Chris, and I know it will resonate with so many folks today and moving forward. So, Carissa, thank you for your leadership, for representing your generation with such depth and clarity. Conversations like this are exactly why youth voices matter in shaping the future of work. So I'm going to ask our listeners to make sure you explore WinNextGen at winnextgen.org to learn more about our work tech resources to prepare next generations for the 3S workforce. Remember that STEM supply chain and the skilled trades and the AI era and beyond, and to help employers develop their workforce for the AI-enabled economy ahead. We need to make sure that Carissa and her generation, they are supported, they are prepared, and ready to participate and lead in the future of work. So until next time, I'm Elisa Basnight. Thank you for being a part of the Win Next Gen community.